And we're ready whenever you are.
Good evening, and thank you for attending tonight's City Council meeting. For those who are attending remotely, the camera in the council chambers is set up to show those attending in person. The platform we are using has a raise hand feature. You will notice a picture of a hand in the upper right-hand corner. When we reach the point in the meeting where the public has the opportunity to address council, you can click the button and be given your opportunity to address council. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with justice. Kathy, would you call the roll?
Mayor Skelly,
Here.
Councilor Dillabaugh,
Here.
Councilor Fisher,
Here.
Councilor Kennedy, here. Councilor Powers, Councilor Reish,
Here.
Councilor Scamperly,
Here.
quorum present.
Councilor Powers emailed to advise he has work-related meeting tonight and has to be excused. Is there a consensus to excuse Councilor Powers?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Let's see, we have two presentations tonight. The first presentation will be the Ogdensburg Volunteer Rescue Squad fiscal report.
Good evening, councilors. Good evening, Steve. Sir. Kathy, thank you for everything you've done for us in your office. This past year, as everybody knows, last year we were talking, we're all smiling and having a good time. Obviously, things have changed since last year. It's been an extremely difficult year for us, both financially, member-wise, you pick it, hours-wise. It's been just a difficult year. I have to first say thank you so very much to the council for the grant enabling us to get our defibrillators. That should be here at the end of March. It will absolutely increase the service that we can provide, and it really came at a perfect time. If it hadn't been for PPE and a few other things that we were lucky enough to get, we would have had an extremely difficult financial year for us. You know, it's everywhere you go as far as looking at it. If you look at our call volume, everything points to how bad it's been. We've had overdoses have gone through the roof. We now currently over the last month and a half, unfortunately, we've had suicides go through the roof. I can't remember ever being on this many suicides in such a short period of time, not just here or any time in my career, which is over 35 years now. I can't believe I said that in public. Other than that, I pass this along to you. I hope you've all had a chance to review it. I'm more than happy to answer any kind of questions that you have. I heard there were some other questions about some possible changes in the agreement and things like that. And I'm more than happy to answer anything you might have.
So the only change that I saw that strikes me is the no service for city employees anymore, free service or in-kind service, I guess we would say.
Right. That in the last contract negotiations, when, sorry, momentary brain lock here. When we went through the last thing, it was agreed, but I guess it never got put in there that way, that it originally came about because the city originally was self-insured when you originally back in POMCO. Okay. And so at that time, we would not charge anybody. We reached an agreement last time with our last negotiations, and she said we just did not want anything that's left over, so that whatever insurance does not cover, we will not bill anybody from the city.
Perfect answer. Thank you.
Yeah, we don't do that whatsoever.
I get it. Yep.
A follow-up, Ken's talking about the old agreement. So Ken, what he's talking about is in the revised agreement, that section's out altogether.
Right. I haven't seen the revised, so I can't.
And the reasons that's out is it's the city attorney's advice that constitutes us providing something to some community members and not others. So it can be seen as a gift over $25, et cetera, et cetera. So I sent that to you and I sent the information if you didn't catch that part, but that's we went to that because we've had a couple issues recently where we've had some cost overrun and some issue with people paying or not paying. So when the city attorney looked at it, he said, really, again, it dates back, like Ken said, when we were self-insured, then it didn't matter. We were paying for everything. So whether that they didn't charge the city as a whole or not, it was an entire group. But now this provision would violate the law as far as what can be provided at no cost to certain community members or others. So limiting it to just city employees would be a limiting factor and wouldn't be allowed.
The only other part that we were asking was about the workers' compensation provision. And in talks apparently with the county attorney, he's the one that advised us that should, like our volunteers are already on the city plan. That should we add the paid staff to it, it would be absolutely minimal cost or no cost to the city. Should there be any kind of cost, we absolutely would cover whatever the difference is. But currently us with BFIS, it's a $13,000 a year hit just for the paid staff. So if that could be changed, that would be significant help to us also.
No, it's great if we can help you and not be burdened with a large cost and take that burden off on you. It's
Any help at this point certainly would help.
a big win. Any other questions?
Unless I'm here for you guys.
Are your volunteers starting to come back now that, COVID's starting to improve a little bit, maybe?
It's certainly starting to improve. In fact, the numbers today, I sit on a public health committee, and in public health committee very nicely, we suddenly at Camp Potsdam had 6 inpatients, and in Claxton-Hepburn we had 4, which is significantly down from been in the mid-20s for the last 2-3 months. So it's really nice to hear. We at the time of the call today, we had only had, I believe, 14 cases. So the numbers do appear to be dropping, which is really nice. Now as for volunteers, I don't blame them. They have not wanted to come around and bring back home to their families what could be, a nasty disease. So we will see in the next couple of months. I sure as heck hope so. But our volunteer staff has been way down, just like any other volunteer organization. We have gotten absolutely crushed during this right now.
You would expect that to improve over time, though?
Sure hope so. We're gonna, run a big membership drive again, but that won't be probably until June, July, or August. And by the time we get them trained, it's another 6 to 8 months. So it takes, it's not a quick process for us by any means.
You have 10 paid now and 40 volunteers?
We do. Of those volunteers that are coming, we've had 11 that have been consistent in coming the entire time. And we just had 2 of our most experienced, that's a nice way to put it, members that have been with us for 30 some odd years, one of them since the organization began. Since they were able to get their vaccinations, they've now started to come back too. So, my fingers are crossed that it gets better real soon.
And you have interest in the rest of your building there that might help to improve your finances? Or?
We did, but due to roadblocks with certain organizations, not the city of Ogdensburg, with other organizations, that has fallen through.
Can we help you with that?
There's not really, because it's more a federal USDA type of hoops that we have to jump through. That this person wanted to get in there a whole lot quicker, a whole lot sooner than it was going to work out to be possible at this time. So,
Well, we appreciate it.
like I said, we appreciate your help this year. It came at a perfect time for us.
Good.
If there's any information you guys need, you guys, Steve's got my cell phone. Feel free to contact me anytime. day or night. I'm here for you, whatever you might need.
I know where you live too.
Oh, yes, you do. Thanks. Anything else?
Anything else?
All right. Thank you, guys. I
Thank you.
appreciate everything.
Thanks, Ken.
Thank you. Thanks.
Our next presentation will be a presentation on the City Ready projects.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Just going to give a very brief introduction to this presentation that will primarily be given on behalf of the city by our engineering team at Ramble. Everybody has received a series of printouts that illustrate the concepts for our two project areas. The first being the Maple City Trail and Oswegatchie Seawall, and the second being where we have three projects along the St. Lawrence Riverfront, starting in Little Park and working east to Morissette Park and Caroline Street area. This evening, the intent is to give you an overview of where we are with both of these projects and to specifically review some of the alternatives in the design approach that we have kind of assembled so that we can get your feedback in terms of where to take these to final design and eventually to permitting. You'll recall that READY, which is the state's Resiliency and Economic Development Initiative process, started in June of 2019 when we were in the midst of our second year of flooding following the flooding of 2017. There was a series of public workshops and meetings with state agencies, affected communities, and the public that continued through the fall and culminated with awards that were made in Clayton on October 31st, 2019. The city is set to receive just shy of $8 million in grant funding, which is 95% of projected project costs for these improvements to prepare and improve our shoreline to make it more resilient to flooding in the future, which we do anticipate additional flooding events to come. We were fortunate in 2020 that we did not sustain flooding, and we right now have every expectation that we won't have severe flooding in 2021. And I hope that that remains true. But we do know that we will have flooding, whether it's 2021 or 2024, we don't really know, but we do know we will have it in the future. So these improvements are intended to protect our shoreline and our park infrastructure during those types of events.
Can I ask you a question? So I'm just don't understand, you mentioned $8 million, and I think the improvements that the city's getting for Morissette Park and the Crescent is 4.875 million.
The Morissette Park and the Crescent are two separate areas. The funding for the Maple City Trail, the grant funding is 1.9 million for that. The funding for the St. Lawrence River projects is just about $6 million.
Does that include the Fort lands?
No, sir.
Oh, okay.
So that's just a very brief overview. You have some hard copies in front of you, and I will provide one to the press I see that's here. I'm going to now introduce Steve Delano from Ramble, or Brian and Gary. I'm not sure which one you're going by these days, but Steve, it's all yours. Thank you.
Andrea, thank you very much. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. Now, Andrea or Kathy, I must admit, I'm trying to figure out how to share my screen here, and I apologize, but I haven't been able to figure it out.
It's good.
Are you looking to share the screen on your laptop, sir? We can see your video, your picture. Are you looking to share something you have on your laptop?
I was looking to share something on my computer, correct. It's the same thing as the attachments that Andrea has passed out, but I was hoping to put them on the screen for people to see and follow along. If there's a secret button, I apologize, I'm missing it.
Is it, if I change to hit?
Yep. You can just pick. You still have control of your computer, but the screen should pop up.
Something just popped up. Okay, let's see.
Should
Okay,
give you
looks
the
like you just
option to
made me
share your screen.
Yeah. Okay, that's great. Let's see which screen are you seeing now? Let's see.
We're seeing the aerial image, Steve.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see. Is there a way? I want to share a different screen. Let's see. Um, let's see. What about now? You see screen with the agenda on it?
Yes, we do.
Okay, good. Is that a size that's appropriate?
Steve, it's pretty small, but the council all has hard copies in front of them. You can try blowing it up, but I don't think you're going to get it enough for people in the audience to see. You can try, but probably not going to go that big.
Gotcha. Okay. So I'll try it about like that, and yeah, at least maybe you can tell where I'm at on the agenda, and you can follow along. Well, sorry about that that little difficulty there. Figured I had 10 minutes to figure it out, and I could do it, but it's beyond my capabilities. So thanks for the introduction, Andrea, and thanks for the opportunity to speak with you all about this project. Wanted to just give a little bit of brief background that, to say that the baseline for the projects that we're talking about here today was kind of established in the couple ready engineering reports that were published in March of 2020. Those reports are kind of referred to as loosely as a quote 10% engineering report, meaning that it was very high level conceptual reports intended to establish a general scope of the project and a budget, and get the baseline for permitting and understanding of environmental issues on the table. In the case of the Maple City Trail project, the report considered various alternatives to address the flooding damage along the trail on the Oswegatchie River downstream of the dam. The consensus after that evaluation was that rather than try to do a repair of the wall in the areas where it had been affected, it was really more appropriate to replace the full length of the wall, and that best met the city's needs. Other alternatives such as riprap revetments didn't really provide the benefits that the city was looking for in providing access to the river for fishing and similar activities. So that report, in the case of Maple City Trail, was published in March 2020. Followed that up shortly thereafter with a pre-application meeting with appropriate regulatory agencies, DEC, OGS, Department of State, Corps of Engineers in March of 2020 as well, to get a number of the environmental issues on the table and being discussed in anticipation of upcoming permit applications. After some time preparing and executing engineering agreements in August, spent the majority of the fall focusing on a series of site investigations, topographic survey, underwater survey along the Oswegatchie River, and as well out into the St. Lawrence to some extent. Subsurface investigations. In the case of the Maple City Trail, I think we put down 12 borings just behind the wall to make sure we had an understanding of the subsurface conditions that would be needed to design the wall properly. Did some environmental survey to understand wetlands and excuse me, issues like that are going to be important when it comes to permit applications coming up here. Did a mussel survey that the state was looking for, looked for the presence of sensitive mussel species in the vicinity of the project, and also did some floodplain modeling understand the dynamics of the river under various flows and their impact on this project and this project's impact on the floodplain, which is important and had been discussed during these initial meetings with the agencies. That initial work culminated with a set of preliminary drawings and a preliminary design report that we published on January 11th of this year, a couple months ago. And since then, we've had a couple meetings with Andrea and other folks at the city, reviewing feedback on that report and those drawings. Primary focus has been on costs, because I guess it became apparent during preparation of that report that in order to replace the full length of the wall as originally anticipated, resulted in an estimated project cost that exceeded the current budget. So if you, I'm going to go back and forth here maybe between this agenda document and some figures, but to just get the numbers on the table, the current project budget, I would say, as established in the Ready report from a year ago, was $2.555 million, which included a $1.9 million New York State grant. Originally, that 1.9 was 95% of a lower number that was established very early on, really before any work at all had been done. But that was kind of the baseline established in the Ready report, was a $2.555 million project. We concluded in the January report, and actually in some value engineering that followed that in order to construct the full length of the wall, again, exceeded that budget. Let me go to a figure here. You should have a series of figures that look like this one. Let's see.
I think the full wall was 3.2 million.
I'm sorry?
I think the full wall was 3.2 million.
The full wall is 3.2 million, correct. Let me show you a couple pictures here. I guess this is this first figure here represents the project area we're talking about. The dam and hydro plant here, old mill here. The initial project scope, and as identified as alternative one in the agenda document there, extends from basically the tip of water, or the tail race, if you will, associated with the old mill, and extends fully to the end of your existing wall. That's about 1,500 linear feet of wall, and the plan is to rebuild that wall and essentially its current alignment, but to a higher elevation as needed to contain the 100-year flood event. And that means, and I guess that means raising the wall to approximately 2 feet higher than its existing height at the downstream end, and about I think 3 or 4 feet higher at the upstream end, in order to contain that. So I guess I'll call it the baseline alternative reflects a complete replacement of that existing wall from to those limits as reflected on the first figure there, 1,500 feet. And the approach is to use a precast concrete segmental type block wall. Ready Rock is maybe the leading manufacturer of those types of wall systems. Interlocking blocks, quite large, maybe 4 feet long, 18 inches high, 2 or 3 feet deep, interlocking. So that alternative, that full alternative there, at a total project cost of $3.205 million. If were to subtract the $1.9 million New York State grant, that would result in a city share of $1.305 million. I guess with that, we spent some time with Andrea, trying to see, well, what else can we do? What can we do for closer to the project budget? And we looked at a couple alternatives, some different wall types, some gabion baskets as an alternative approach. Again, concluded we needed a wall rather than a revetment to maximize access to the river along the trail, and came up with what we're referring to here as alternative 2, which resulted in about 1,000 feet of replacement of that wall. And let's see if I skip to the next figure. We mapped that as starting at the upstream end of the river, south end of the project, and extending 1,000 feet out to here. That would get us past the area where the wall had been damaged the most, and would replace again that wall in full to the height that it needed to be in order to contain the flood, but it wouldn't address the downstream 500 feet or so of the wall. Again, this is intended to see, well, what can we do to work within the budget that we currently have. And we concluded that we could almost get that down to that was almost down to the $2.55 million budget, if you will. 2.625 in this case. If we were to shave a little bit more off it, we could get it down there. Would result in a city share of $725,000. We weren't thrilled with that option though, because it is to some extent an incomplete project. And so we looked at a third alternative that's kind of in between as far as cost, but is a little bit, we think addresses more of the objectives of the project. And let's see, this would be, if you go to the third figure in your set, this would be a wall that would start where the existing wall ends at the north end of the project site, downstream end of the river, and extends up 1,200 feet. That gets you to the end of this finger that kind of protects the tail race from the old mill. So it would really replace all of that wall with new ready rock walls, similar to what we were talking about originally. But we would leave the remaining 300 feet of existing wall, which is in relatively good shape and is protected by the finger there. It's protected against the high river currents, and the plan would then be to leave that wall and basically berm up behind it up to the elevation needed to protect the trail from the design flood event, which we could do. So we would maintain that 300 feet of existing wall and build 1,200 feet of new wall. And costs for that are, as you'd expect, somewhere in the middle of the other two alternatives. Total project cost of $2.92 million. City share based on the $1.9 million grant would be $1.02 million. We talked about a couple other potential cost-saving measures. It's kind of a difficult project to chop off pieces of because we need to accomplish the objective of protecting the entire trail from this flood event. But a couple things that we could do. We think that there's, I think under all of these alternatives, I would say the trail is getting replaced, the grade is getting raised, the trail is going to become a little bit more meandering than it currently is. Site improvements would include plantings, trees, shrubs, benches is the current plan, and we've got some drawings that I guess we weren't planning to get into in detail here today, but we have those that would show what's going on there. We could scale back a little bit on those improvements, perhaps, I think in total, there's maybe $500,000 of the project cost associated with those kind of improvements. I think with we could shave a little bit off of that and still accomplish most of what we're trying to achieve here. We've also talked about maybe having the city DPW perform asphalt paving of the trail as opposed to having a contractor do that. That would take the city forces away from other activities, but it's a possibility that we've discussed. So I think that's kind of the overview of where we stand on Maple City Trail. And I guess, Andrea, you want to open it up for input here? Or do you want me to continue on to Dubisky Morissette?
No, I think this is a great opportunity to discuss with the council their thoughts, comments, questions on the three alternatives that were presented to sort of feel out the temperature for kind of where we're looking to go. I just want to preface the discussion by saying I think the feedback we're looking for is where the city wants to go, obviously, in terms of the alternatives that were presented. We feel as though we have really looked at this multiple times, and these really are the three best options. They all do exceed the original budget, and I want to take one moment to let you know where that original budget came from. So in addition to the fact that we are in a pandemic and we have we're all very familiar with the fact that construction costs have gone up exponentially over the last year, and that we predict that those will continue to be high. The initial budget for this project came out of a 2017 study, and we did project some marginal increases from that engineer's budget when we were proposing it to the state in 2019. But as Steve stated earlier tonight, based on the flood data that we now have, that we did not have the benefit of in 2017 or 2019, we know that the 2-foot proposed elevation at the $2 million budget really is not going to be adequate to prevent and protect us from future flooding. And so these numbers really are the numbers that we're looking at. So I wanted, before we get into too much discussion, there are ways that we can phase some additional work in over time by budgeting through the city budget process, as well as through looking at additional funding sources. The state is contributing significant funding to these projects, so additional state funding may be a challenge, but certainly there's parks and trails funding available from foundations and federal sources that we'll certainly look at. So I do want to keep that in mind. Obviously, we will continue to look for other people's money to offset costs. But we do need some direction in terms of finalizing the engineering and securing our permits so that we can keep the project moving forward. So through that lens, we are very eager to hear council's feedback on the options and alternatives that were presented this evening.
I'd like to meet with the engineers and get more specificity about the funding and the option of that. I'm not ready to make any kind of decision tonight.
I believe that in alternative 1 or alternative 2, I believe if we don't do it fully, we'll have regrets, and I believe that we're also building it for future generations. I was really stuck on alternate 1, but alternate 2 was saving some of that original wall. That's some history there too, and that wall is stable. That wouldn't be a bad approach either.
So alternative 2, that wall from where alternative 2 stops is completely shot. It's gone. All that needs to be replaced. So I don't see alternative 2 as.
Alternative 2 was up by the mill. was.
No,
protected.
that's alternative three. Alternative three, I agree, is a better option.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm thinking alternative three.
So I think that alternative two shouldn't even be an option.
No.
Either we're gonna do it or not.
I agree.
I think we probably
I
agree.
didn't, I was reading the wrong one.
I like he said at the end, if I'm not mistaken, about 500,000 for planting and decorating and things like that in the area and trees. Now, we get tree grants and things like that too for being a tree city, right? Could we use some of that money down there? And instead of that 500,000, maybe if we could shave off 500 grand.
500,000 is raising the last bit of grade. Your wall's going up 4 foot on one part, 2 foot on another, but you're going to raise the grade all up 1 foot. And we go up and then all these water.
So I misunderstood.
If I may, so just the difference in 1 and 3 from the cost perspective, I would just say, I think if the discussion at the moment is we're not looking for a really skinny down solution, then 2 is out. I think that sounds, I'm just saying at the moment, I wouldn't put a whole lot of analytical time right now at your level on the difference in 1 and 3. The money's not enough of a difference. I'd really want you to consider that right now until we get the design a lot farther. We look at what funding is available. A difference in a couple $100,000 for the difference we're getting in the project probably isn't. So and I think right now maybe what's better is that we continue to drive on just with your general intent that you really want to do it right, or maybe we shouldn't do it at all. So I think we're looking for kind of a broad-based, way to go here. These are engineer estimates. Not saying they'll be right or wrong, but they could go up, they could go down. What I really want to make sure we have tonight is the intent of what council wants to do, so we can get this design a little bit closer on all the things you want, and then we can really wire down hard on what the numbers are going to look like. I think that's probably the biggest thing, because I don't feel like, other than a couple of occasions, we've had a lot of discussion on this. So I don't think there's an absolute decision that has to be made tonight. I think it's just more, at this stage of the project, what questions you have, what things do we need to go back and answer to start to make sure we've got your intent tightened down, so then we can provide that to the engineering office.
I need something better than this, because it's broken out and it's not clear to me the amount that's coming from Ready. I don't know if that 1.9 is Ready.
Yes, that's correct.
Ready?
Correct.
Yes.
So, I mean, if you're looking at, a green light on one of these, you're looking at
Nope.
$1 million in city costs and another $1.3 million on the other side. I mean, I would ask where that's coming from.
I agree. And that's why I say tonight, I think one of the things we keep trying to do is back this project into dollar amounts. And I think we need to design the project as you want it to be. And then once we get it to a certain point, then we may have to bring you different courses of action, how we do that. Alternate items get set aside until we see where our money goes. I'm really just concerned that we get the design where we want it. We might be able to only fund 3/4 of the design, perhaps. I just want to make sure that we've gotten everything included.
I know personally in the several meetings that I sat in, when we met with the Army Corps of Engineers, we met with everybody down at the Division Center. I know the consensus of that meeting when I was in there was we wanted to do it once. We wanted to do the project the right way. We wanted this to be, this project to sustain longevity, so that future generations were not going to deal with the same issues we're dealing with now. And when I left that meeting, I was under the impression that we wanted to make this area very user friendly. We wanted to make it so it enabled access to the waterfront for everyone. So I think keeping that in the forefront going forward, make ease of accessibility. So we make it handicap accessible in the areas that access the river, things like that. I think that's what needs to be on the forefront. And then once we see what something like that looks like, then moving forward. But I think doing it once and doing it right, obviously, is not an open checkbook. So we just have to decide what the important parts are and then pick those apart. But I think sitting here and talking about dollar amounts, we're not there yet.
Mm-hmm. And I think Councilor Reach, just where it says city share right now, that's the line that's there. That doesn't say that's what we have to put in. What I want trying to get is the magnitude of order, so we see what kind of funding we have to go after, who else's money we can find, to defray that. And we haven't even begun that process because we don't know really what we're looking for. So that's why I'm not, it's not that money's no issue. Councilor Kenny's correct. I'm just trying to get down, what do we want? Best case scenario, what does we want our project to look like? And then we can start working on how that gets funded. We know what we have from the Ready project. We don't know what else we could possibly get from other sources.
We had talked about in those meetings was the possibility of, looking at like a fishing pier, like that stuck out into the water to fish. I know we had looked at different things like that, and I think those are items that need to be discussed. I know that I think there's one down by there now. I know a lot of people do use that. Is that something that could be reused? Is options like that, I think, are kind of what we need to look at in public comment as far as what they would maybe like to see down there. If that is something that people want to see stay, or is that something people don't want there to obstruct the walkway? Ideas.
We don't get that down that far, do we?
This doesn't take out. Yeah, so there will be additional public meetings that will be required to have. But we have to get the engineering report to the point where we can check the box and have the hearings on that. And we can't do that until we have a final design. So to Councilor Kennedy's point and to Mr. Jelly's comment, the intent of this discussion is really to understand what the council's desire is in terms of what concept should we be pursuing in the final design, even though we may have to scale it back when it actually comes to construction, or we may be successful in acquiring additional funds. And we will only have that direction to seek additional funds once the council gives us the path to take. So this is the discussion to have. Are we kind of looking at a partial project with a phased approach? We only want to look at designing 75% of it, or are we going to go all in and get it all designed and put it out to bid with some alternates that we may not be able to do? That's really the direction that we're looking for this evening to help move the project forward.
I think that's the best course of action.
Design it for the 1,500 feet, and then, and then go from there financially.
I'm dismayed that we would have to raise that wall 4 to 5 feet by the pump house.
Steve, can you speak to how the determinations were made on the different heights of the wall? Can you speak to the methodology used there?
Yes, we prepared a floodplain model, a HECRAS floodplain model based on the geometry and topography of the river channel within this region here, and cut cross sections at several points along the length of this stretch of river, and finite element modeling was done to establish the estimated water level at each of those cross sections down the river at the under the design flow conditions, and based on those elevations, we're establishing the height of the wall to contain that flow within that within the river channel, within the wall. And yeah, it was until doing that modeling, it was not clear how high the wall needed to be. The Ready report indicates that it would be 2 feet higher than the existing wall, which is fine at the downstream end, but doesn't get us where we need to be at the upstream end. In addition to that, there was well, go ahead. I think does that help?
It does, and just Steve, from a calculations perspective, are we like at the 20-year flood stage, 50, 100? What was the calculation there based to protect against?
We're trying to contain the 100-year flood within the channel.
And again, we certainly don't want to do these things often, and we don't want to leave the next 2 generations behind. But what, from a compliance perspective, do we have to prepare this project for that level of protection? Do we have to go out to 100-year?
I think that's debatable. We certainly want the flood. We certainly need the wall to withstand that. We can't have the wall erode. We certainly need the terrain, if it's going to flood, to be able to withstand that and not erode behind the wall and compromise the integrity of the wall. That's an absolute, I would say, under the 100-year flood event. But there's a potential that we could design it to be overtopped. Any thoughts on that, Dreher, if you're on?
No, I think you're addressing the right concerns there. Ideally we want to keep the water contained within the channel, but if it does overtop behind the wall, we have to make sure that it can drain when the flood recedes and it doesn't do any damage, to the backfill behind the wall. So yeah.
Yeah, and Steve, this is Kyle. I can speak to, our discussions early on in the ready process. And, when we had all the agencies at the table, their direction was, thou shalt use this kind of modeling to do your estimation. So, that is the standard of the industry, and we use what was approved by those agencies. And they certainly pointed us in the direction, of making the height equivalent to the 100-year floodplain. And Andrea, I think you were present at some of those. I think you were hearing the same message that I was.
Yeah, I think the 100-year floodplain is a pretty typical design standard. And if we were going to design to anything less than that, we would certainly need to get authorization from our state partners.
Yeah, and I think, and listen, FEMA will push it and they'll push the state towards the 100-year floodplain. That there's no question about that. The only thing, again, we just have to make sure that we brief the courses of action. I just need to know if that's a mandate or not, because the difference in doing a portion of the project at 100-year and doing none of it at all at no year doesn't necessarily bias anything. So it's kind of an analysis of, obviously I don't think probably 20 is there, but what is 50 bias? What is 100 bias? What do we get done? What do we not get done? If we do the 100 for part of it, but we leave ourselves significantly vulnerable in the last mile, if you will, that's not helping us either. So I just think just having the granularity of that data, so we know how the calculations were done and what we're trying to achieve. Because I think if for no other reason, the simplistic question will be like Councilor Scamperly just asked, hey, 4 foot, that seems like a lot. And obviously there's some, level of controversy on the, let's say, the naturalness of our flooding. This isn't necessarily being caused by the natural cycle of the 100-year flooding. We know there's a regulation of the water problem going on as well. So I just want to make sure that council understands what all the implications are, because it does make a difference in how far our money is going to go, if that makes sense.
Yep. And again, this is Kyle, and that is understood. And that was that was certainly an item of discussion at our pre-application meeting and subsequently, where we were trying to establish exactly what our baseline conditions had to be. And, those were dictated to us by those agencies. And, in terms of other variables that we have here, you can see the constriction on your screen right underneath the title block there for alternative 3. There's a constriction in the river right there, and that kind of makes a difference in terms of what your height needs to be, as opposed to the northern end where it widens out. So hope that helps.
Well, I think what Councilor Scamperly is trying to point out is the obvious to people that live here, and that's that the area closest to the dam in that old tail race just doesn't flood. The problem's down farther. So to raise that by 4 feet makes absolutely no sense. It might make sense on paper, but the state needs to be reasonable, especially when it's our money they're spending. It was the state and the federal government that put the new tail race in that actually causes the problem. So I'm not too sure we should be taking their advice.
exactly right, John. And that is where, if any place needs 4 feet, that's where the flooding always occurs. Is that area. I mean, you need a pair of hip waders to walk through there when it floods, but down by the dam, I've never seen it flood down there.
And when you get so high, it changes the feel. You're so far away from the water. Damn.
And, you know, they should also take into consideration that it's not like you're, you know, protecting condos here. It's a park. You know, no one wants it to flood, but let's not be unreasonable. So we should talk to those agencies. It's not like you're protecting millions or billions of dollars of, you know, homes and stuff. I mean,
No, but we do want to protect the wall. That
Could,
building.
yeah, you don't want it to, but within reason, Dan, is my point.
could we look at the 1,500 feet and look at possibly some elevation corrections?
I think again, Mayor, what I'm trying to get to tonight is, I mean, it sounds like the council's intent is what we suspected it would be. Let's plan to do it right. Let's see what the final numbers shake out at, and then figure out how we defray that cost, whether it's finding additional grant funding, whether it's petitioning to reduce the standard in which we're being held to do it by. But let's get the plan down that we want to do and start going.
I think we all like to do the whole wall.
Number one, I agree.
And, but in the final engineering, maybe we can, you know, look at, again, at their calculations, like that 4 foot seems very excessive. I think we all agree on that.
Good conversation.
Okay,
So we need, yep.
so number one,
So Steve, the council does have a bit of an agenda this evening, so I do want to get to Morset Park. I'm just hoping maybe we can do an expedited review of that concept and the budget numbers there, so we can get their feedback on some of the elements.
In terms of the
Sure.
budget, what was originally approved for the Ready project, I believe, was around $875,000 in bonding. So is that part of the city's share that's already approved, or is this above that, or is it?
The ban that the city did is for our full 5%, which is $414,000 and change.
Okay, I thought it was 800,000. It's 400,000?
415 and change.
So our requirement for the Ready project is $400,000, and we're asking them to design $2.6 million in city share. That's what we're instructing them to do tonight. I'm not, but you guys are. Whatever you want to.
What we are doing this evening is presenting the updated costs and the design alternatives to council based on the data that we now have that we did not have in 2019. So it is now up to the council to choose to move forward by selecting an alternative that we can take to final design and permitting. Or if you choose not to go forward, this would be a great time to tell us so we can pay Ramble what we owe them and we can give back the state funding. That's essentially where we're at.
Well, I think there's ways to reduce cost and do it. We can also instruct you to do it within the budget that we have. What the state has provided and what our 5% matches is also an option to say, that's it. That's all we're spending. Design it so it's in the budget.
Yeah, again, I think what we're trying to do now, Counselor, is get the project designed to what we want, and then we'll figure out how to slice it down, create alternate items, et cetera. I'm afraid if we do what we're talking about there, and that was something we did discuss. How do we just design this with the money we had? So the truth is, this project started long enough ago that the money that was estimated then versus what it will cost for construction today has drastically changed. There's no doubt. When those numbers came in, we expect a modest increase between the time you even step a project like this and you get numbers, but the construction costs have gone up significantly. And I think also, as they got into this, the scope of the project is a bit different as well. I mean, so I think the cons from going from concept, or, you know, that the state wrote us the money and wrote the mitigation plan for to where we are now is just different. So I don't think, we're not asking for anyone to commit to money tonight. We're just trying to commit to where does the council want to get.
My choice would be to design it for what the grant is and what our our 5% share is. I thought our 5% share was a lot of money. So I mean, that's my choice. So.
I believe even at the original design, it's way over what, for some thousand. I mean, that's what's riprap along that track. And so you build it like that, I don't know if we're doing justice for the future generations, but even at the original design, we're still looking at hundreds of thousands of dollars more.
It's also the future generation that has to pay off the bond too. So.
Yeah, and again, we'd like the opportunity certainly to be able to use, all the tools to try to raise money. Again, nobody's talking about at this point committing the city to any more money than we have to, including the $415,000 we originally were. That's down as our share now, but we'll certainly work hard till the end of the project to defray that. Because keeping in mind, this won't be an overnight project. We'll have, periods of time to be working the grant processes and systems so I think again, rough order of magnitude estimating, which is how these projects are incepted, is just that. It's rough order of magnitude kind of stuff. But no matter how you mark it, if we were doing this project, if this were our own project and we were designing this how we want it, and the state came along and said, fine, there's your project, we're going to give you $8 million, and our share at that point was 3. It's probably still a decent deal. We just got to figure out how to defray the cost of the 2 or 3. So I think that's the whole idea I'm trying to get to, is how do we do this right? So we're not doing a project now and then a project later and a project later, or saying, hey, we wish we had done, we had considered building additional docks, or we considered developing the Oswegatchie, with more public docks. We just consider those things because it's not going to get any cheaper doing it later. So again, I don't. Councilor, we certainly understand your intent about not spending any more of the taxpayers' money. I think we 100% got that. I just don't want to miss the opportunity while we've got a lot of hands and a lot of brains invested now in doing this design, that we don't short-sight it.
Well, normally you design to your project budget. So.
And the engineers did that, and that isn't the project that the city wanted. The mayor was present, as was Councilor Kennedy and
Okay, you
Councilor
asked for my
Chamberlain.
input. I'm just giving you my input.
I appreciate it. I just want you to understand the background, and knowing where I and the engineers are coming from, that was presented as an option, and it does, as the mayor stated, include almost all riprap for in the instance of the Maple City Trail, which is just not the feedback we got from council that was the direction they wanted to go. And so based on the feedback we have received thus far, we aren't within the original budget. So.
And as we get into the project, and we really should move forward just to the Dubisky side, but when we get into this, you'll see that a lot of the things that we felt like we were getting beyond dirt and rocks would have to be eliminated from the project, which I don't think would make anybody all that happy either if we just felt like we were getting dirt and rock elevation instead of some of the accessory things we wanted. So we'll let them brief that, and I think you'll see where we're going with this.
I think building something that we'll be proud of is important. So if we want people to use our walkways, use our water, we need to build for what they also want. So next.
Steve, do you want to just kind of give a high-level overview of the concepts for the for the Morset Park and Marina area?
Sure. And so I guess I'll refer to page 2 of I'll call it the agenda document, and then we've got some figures here. I guess the 2 projects are kind of parallel, or proceeding in parallel, and similarly, we published the draft report and preliminary drawings in mid-January, and at the same time did a cost estimate for the project there. And I guess I would kind of clarify that I would say that the design level of design reflected in both of these submittals is I think I would say 30-40% design. So it's significantly farther than the quote 10% design that was presented in the reports a year ago. And I think we are at the point where we've got a decent idea of what is going to what the projects are going to consist of, and we've got a better handle on cost estimates that we did certainly a year ago. The bottom line, though, here is that costs are higher than estimated as well, previously estimated as well. The current project budget as established in the March 2020 Ready project was $6.317 million. Of that, $6.01 million New York State grant. The current estimated project cost based on the January design documents and a little bit further refinement as well on the cost estimating, $7.36 million. So $1 million higher would result in a city share, if you will, of $1.359 million. Again, the difference being 7.36 minus the $6.01 million grant. Let me show you generally what we have there. We've got a few figures here to show you. In general, we're constructing a sheet pile wall along the outer wall of the marina pier, of the municipal pier, if you will, and putting a concrete cap on the top of the wall along the city dock and into the marina to raise that elevation to prevent flooding of the parking area and park area here. As a result of doing that, raising that grade up, right now you have a playground in here, and you have tennis courts in the south end of the park. We're proposing to reconfigure the park to move the playground into the south end of the park and provide a pavilion with restrooms adjacent to it, and moving two of the tennis courts across Caroline Street there, if you can see where I'm pointing. Also proposing a floating dock on the outside of the pier, accessible from the pier. That was something that was not included in the cost estimate that was done in March 2020, and that's a significant reason for the increased costs. That was, I think, discussed just after that report was published, so the costs were not included in that estimate. In the set of drawings that we've got a cross section through the municipal pier showing how that wall would be constructed and how the top of the city dock wall would be raised. There were significant concerns with the stability of the walls. These are existing walls, and the extended detail of information available on those walls is limited. We did do some non-destructive testing to try to identify the depth of the sheet pilings to help in analyzing the stability of the existing wall since we're modifying it. Let's see, here's just a larger view of the park improvements and some examples of what the pavilion could look like, playground could look like. Again, those are subject to refinement and further discussions, but those are the concepts that we've got in mind at this point. Let's see, what else did I want to say here? So I guess a few things that we did identify as potential cost-saving measures. If we wanted to eliminate or defer the floating dock, that's an element that could be added at a later date relatively easily. It's kind of its own separate piece of the project. That would reduce the cost by about $650,000. Kind of similar to that, we could reduce the length of it. Right now, it's approximately 400 feet long. If we wanted to reduce that somewhat, that cost could be reduced proportionally, approximately. There's significant cost in the playground equipment and surfacing. It's a solid rubber surfacing, which is what a lot of playgrounds are getting these days. I think there's potential room to scale back somewhat on the playground, potentially to the tune of $200,000. And there's a decent amount of asphalt pavement in this project that, again, similar to the other project, could be done by city forces if they're so inclined, potentially to the tune of $300,000 or so. So that's maybe the high-level overview. I know
Is there a reason why the Morissette Park area is in dark green? Does that signify that the elevation is raised in that area?
I guess that's really just representing the limits of work, if you will, intended to highlight the limits of work there. But grade is being raised from the city dock wall, approximately 2 feet, I believe, here, kind of at the south end here. That's I think we're approaching pre-existing grades.
And it doesn't need to be raised over near the Dubisky Center, on either side of the Dubisky Center, or where the boat launch is and the little park and that. It will be. I don't think so.
The boat launch under the design flood event is going to flood, but it's not going to. But the Dubisky Center is above the flood elevation. The pool is. And, I think during the design flood event, we're going to get some water in here, and it might surcharge the boat launch. But I think that's the city's aware of that. It's not going to do any long-term damage to other facilities. We are beefing up the riprap along the shoreline to protect from erosion. But yeah, water level will get up in there, but it's not going to impact the facilities that.
So the only place the elevation's being raised by 2 feet is Morissette Park, or that dark green area.
And then
Correct.
riprap along the shoreline.
Yeah, it's been, yeah.
Nothing? No comments?
Is the entire park being increased by 2 feet?
It's being increased by about 2 feet at the north end. We'll call it the water end, and that's gonna taper down to essentially nothing at the south end. So it's gonna vary from a maximum of 2 to again existing grades down at the south end of the park.
So as it sits right now, the front of the docks, that'll all be up 2 feet. So all that's got to be redone anyway, right?
Correct.
Good.
No, my remark is it's pretty sad this money being spent because they've lost control of the water levels that they were able to manage for decades. Now are so much higher.
And by raising the city dock by 2 feet at its face, is that conducive to recreational boating or tourist boats? Has that been taken into consideration?
Yeah, the idea is that that larger vessels, larger tour boats would utilize the city dock. Smaller, recreational watercrafts and slightly larger ones than that would use the floating dock.
Thank you, Steve, and all of your counterparts at Ramble and EDR.
Yes, thank you.
Sounds good, guys. Have a great night. Thanks for your time. We appreciate it.
Thanks, folks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We do not have any public hearings tonight, so this brings us to personal appearance.
Mayor, 1 minute. Just before we, I had several people, just mention that today's International Women's Day. It's a day to celebrate women's achievements and raise awareness about women's equality. I just thought that was worth mentioning tonight because it actually fell on the night of a meeting and several people had asked me to mention that.
Nice. At this time, if anyone attending in person would like to address council, please come down to the podium and you have 5 minutes.
I won't need all 5 minutes. Good evening. My name is Scott McRoberts. I'm resident of 337 Proctor Ave. I'd like to follow up on my statements made at the February 8th City Council meeting in a subsequent email that was sent to all councilors and the city manager. I'm sure some of you recall what it was about, but I'll remind you anyway. It was regarding the ordinance that was passed to limit access to the city attorney by councilors unless they had a majority of the council support. It was stated that this ordinance was necessary to control the cost of the city attorney. However, the 2020 total of $162,498 was $45,576 over budget, or 39%. Pretty steep. This was passed without a public hearing and is not listed under new laws. I ask you, was it enacted? Has this made it to the city attorney for his opinion, or is it stuck at 3 votes? I know this is not a Q&A session, but I've discussed it publicly and sent all of you an email asking for an answer. You time and time again state that this is not the forum to be asking questions. So I thought I went about it the correct way, still no answers. How do citizens who do not align with your views get answers? We are taxpayers and deserve answers to meaningful questions, whether you agree with me or not. Anyway, hopefully I hear something before the next meeting. Thank you for your time, and I look forward to your response.
Thank you.
Mayor, if I may, excuse me, I believe we'll have a detailed opinion from the city attorney prior to the next meeting. We got about 6 things backed up in the pipeline with them right now. I'd hoped we'd had it for tonight. We just didn't get it back, but Councilor Powers did send it along. And to be able to define the question, define the topic, I did send it along as requested, and I will have that back to share with all the councilors. I do hope it'll be before the next council meeting. Again, I'm between the sales tax and the property foreclosure and a couple other issues in the city going on. It just hasn't gotten to it yet, but we will have an answer.
Those are very important too.
Without a legal opinion though, have you guys read what's in the municipal code? It's pretty clear. You really shouldn't take a legal opinion to see the correct way to deal with the city attorney.
Well,
I mean, you guys are all sitting up there. It never was acted like that until you guys did your resolution. It was always acted in the manner that is stated in the municipal code, right or wrong. I look forward to the opinion.
thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak? Come up to the podium. If anyone attending remotely, use the raise hand feature and you have 5 minutes.
I don't see any hands raised.
Okay, and this brings us to correspondence. Do we have any correspondence?
We have 1 letter. Mayor Skelly, Councilor Reish, Councilor Fisher, Councilor Scamperly, Councilor Kennedy, Councilor Powers, Councilor Dillabaugh, and City Manager Jelly. Ogdensburg has had a library since 1828. In 1892, the citizens of Ogdensburg believed the library to be so important, they voted to organize and financially support a municipal public library. The Ogdensburg Public Library was chartered by New York State on December 13, 1893, and has been serving the citizens of the city of Ogdensburg and surrounding areas ever since. The library continues to be a cornerstone of the city. A public library is supported by the public. Its services are available free of charge to all citizens. Due to the city's withdrawal of funding on January 1st, 2022, in order to save the library, the Ogdensburg Public Library Board of Trustees is presenting a referendum for $225,000 more on May 18th, 2021. Currently, the library receives $125,000 through 2 previous successful referendums. Upon public approval, the library will continue its service to the community, promoting lifelong learning by meeting its educational, informational, cultural, and technological needs. For the continuation of these vital services, we request your support for our referendum. Thank you. With respect, Ogdensburg Public Library Board of Trustees.
Okay. And that's it? No others?
That's correct.
Next, we have our consent agenda that the claims is enumerated in the general fund warrant number 05-2021, the amount of $526,536.60, and library warrant number 5-2021 in the amount of $8,897.54, and the capital fund warrant number 05-2021 in the amount of $973,752.86, and community development fund warrant number 05-2021 in the amount of $76.05, and community renewal fund warrant number 05-2021 in the amount of $0 as audited be and the same hereby are ordered paid. I so move.
I'll second it.
Okay. Call the roll.
Mayor Skelly,
Yes.
Counselor Dilaba,
Yes.
Counselor Fisher,
Yes.
Counselor Kennedy,
Yes.
Counselor Reese,
Yes.
Counselor Scamperly,
Yes.
approved.
We do not have any appointments tonight, and this brings us to items for council action. Our first item of business is a resolution authorizing the city manager to sign an agreement between the city of Ogdensburg and the Ogdensburg Volunteer Rescue Squad for ambulance rescue service within the boundaries of the city of Ogdensburg. It is bill number 8, and it was tabled on February 22nd, 2021. I will make a motion to take this resolution off table. Would anyone like to second it?
I will.
Discussion, anyone? Okay, Kathy, would you call the roll?
Counselor Fisher,
Yes.
Counselor Kennedy,
Yes.
Counselor Reese,
Yes.
Counselor Scamperly,
Yes.
Mayor Skelly,
Yes.
Counselor Dilaba,
Yes.
approved.
Our next item of business will be read by Director of Planning and Development, Andrea Smith.
Was that the vote to get off the table, or
That was to take it off the table. That's correct, sir.
so
Now
now,
we need to
now we,
actually vote on.
you want us
Now
to
we-
vote on the,
That's correct.
That's it.
There's no discussion?
No discussion.
Okay. Counselor Kennedy,
Yes.
Counselor Reese,
yes.
Counselor Scamperly,
Yes.
Mayor Skelly,
Yes.
Counselor Dilaba,
Yes.
Counselor Fisher,
Yes.
approved.
Okay, now our next item of business will be read by Director of Planning and Development, Andrea Smith.
It's a resolution calling for a public hearing seeking comment on the city's application to New York State Homes and Community Renewal for up to the maximum amount of $500,000 under the 2020 Community Development Block Grant Program.
I'll make a motion to introduce this item. Second.
I'll second it.
Any discussion?
Is there a formula or anything as far as like, or an idea of how the 500,000 would be spent? Is it just for housing? Is it for infrastructure? Is there other dollar amounts or?
This is specifically for their housing program. This is the funding. This funding doesn't fund infrastructure.
So it'd be 500,000 for housing rehabilitation?
Right, so the program in which we would do is up for consideration. We have done homeowner, single family owner occupied rehab with the Development Authority in the past. We'll be presenting two options to City Council. That will be one. And the second option is one that we also applied for in 2019, but we were unsuccessful in funding, which would be a partnership between the Land Bank and North Country Housing Council to provide funding to do rehab to units that the Land Bank acquires from the city. So there'll be two options that are presented to you, and $500,000 is the maximum. We don't have to apply for that amount, or you could choose to do 250 for one application and 250 for another, not to exceed a combined amount of $500,000.
I just want to say, good luck, go get it.
Well, in either way, just remember, we're just calling for the public hearing now.
Yeah.
So there'll be a lot more details once we get a little further along.
Further discussion? Kathy, would you call the roll?
Counselor Reed,
Yes.
Counselor Scamperly,
Yes.
Mayor Skelly,
Yes.
Counselor Dilaba,
Yes.
Counselor Fisher,
Yes.
Counselor Kennedy,
Yes.
approved.
Our next item of business will be read by City Manager Stephen Jelly.
A resolution authorizing the city manager to enter into an amended professional consulting agreement with the Development Authority of the North Country for the water treatment and wastewater treatment facilities. In essence here, what we're providing is, excuse me, our current contracts will expire at the end of May. This will extend us through the end of the year. As you all know, we're currently working with DAG now to obtain a range of estimates on an array of services. But no matter what we do, I'd like to get this back in cycle, or I'd like to get in cycle with our budget here.
Yeah.
So even if we just stay doing what we're doing now, this will have us in cycle with the budget here.
I'll make a motion to introduce this.
I'm sorry, and same rate, the same rate applies that we're paying now.
Nothing really changes, just takes us through.
Yes.
Do I have a second?
Okay.
Any further discussion? Kathy, would you please call the roll?
Counselor Scamperly,
Yes.
Mayor Skelly,
Yes.
Counselor Dilaba,
Yes.
Counselor Fisher,
Yes.
Counselor Kennedy,
Yes.
Counselor Reese,
Yes.
approved.
Our next item of business will be read by City Manager Stephen Jelly.
Resolution to call for a public hearing and public notice on a proposed ordinance amending Chapter 209, Section 209-54, excuse me, Schedule XIVV, time limit parking of the Ogdensburg Municipal Code. What we're talking about doing is on the left side of the street here, Caroline Street. It's making this 2-hour parking like it is on the other side of the street. What I'm hoping to do there is just stop the all-day parking from whether it's staff, court, people across the street, whatever. I'm trying to just keep that site open for customers, pull in, pull out 2-hour parking for us and the food bank operation across the street. So we had a sign down near the end of the parking lot that said no parking Monday through Friday, et cetera. We've taken that down just at the moment, but I'd like to restrict this here to visitor parking in and out.
I'll make a motion to introduce this.
I'll second.
Any discussion?
This is for a public hearing, correct?
Yes, sir.
Kathy, would you call the roll?
Mayor Skelly,
Yes.
Counselor Dilaba,
Yes.
Counselor Fisher,
Yes.
Counselor Kennedy,
Yes.
Counselor Reese,
Yes.
Counselor Scamperly,
Yes.
approved.
Our next item of business will be read by Director of Planning and Development, Andrea Smith.
The resolution calling for a public hearing and public notice on a proposed ordinance to lease municipal property at 2 Caroline Street within the Greenbelt Park. Be it resolved that ordinance number blank of 2021 entitled an ordinance to lease city-owned property be and hereby is introduced before the City Council of the City of Ogdensburg, New York. And be it further resolved that the City Council shall hold a public hearing in the matter of the adoption of the aforesaid ordinance to be held at City Council chambers in the City of Ogdensburg, New York on the 22nd day of March 2021 at 6 p.m. And be it further resolved that the City Council give notice of such public hearing by publication in the newspaper so designated by the City Council of the City of Ogdensburg for the legal and public notices at least 7 days before the hearing date of of a notice setting forth the time and place, describing the proposed ordinance in summary form. This is the follow-up to a presentation that was given several months ago from NOAA and the Army Corps of Engineers regarding the replacement of the current gauge house that is located on the north end of Caroline Street within the Greenbelt Park system. That building, it currently sort of looks like a shed, houses lots of mechanical equipment that gauges, among other things, the constant water level of the St. Lawrence River every day since it was installed when the Seaway came in the 50s. So they are proposing to remove the building, upgrade the equipment, and replace the building with a slightly larger building, being 8 feet by 8 feet. And they're requesting a formal lease agreement for the land, which is presently not in place for that structure.
I'll move that.
Any further discussion on that?
And you were going to go back and ask for an annual rent?
The city attorney and I are working through that. Right now, we will have it pinned down for you for the actual public hearing and for action. But right now, we're doing a little bit more due diligence to see what other communities are getting for similar gauge houses on municipal property.
But you'll have that for the public hearing, so people will know what we're going to get.
We will. Right now, it does appear that similar gauge houses do not have formal lease agreements. They're more like ours is presently. So the one that ours will be modeled after in Holland, Michigan, there is no payment. So it does look like it will be recommended that we do the same lease rate that we do now for municipal space at $2 a square foot. So at 1,100 square feet, that would be $2,200 a year. But we will confirm that for you prior to the public hearing.
Thank you, Andy. Kathy? Go ahead.
And their work would coincide with the ready work, I guess, if we went ahead with it and be coordinated and everything?
Correct. Yeah, we're lucky in the sense that the timeframes seem to really be aligning. This project started several years ago before we had flooding in our park system at all. So that the two projects will align we're very fortunate.
I think we ought to get about $1,000 a month.
We can certainly propose that. I don't know that there's a precedent, but
We're somewhere between good neighbors, and we get used to the data, and it's a partnership for nothing or $2. So we're somewhere in between there. And Andrew and I are pro and conning $0, $1, or $2. That's sort of where we are right now. So we'll be back. We just want to make sure we don't. It seems relatively simplistic, and I don't want to step over a lot for $2,200 either. We need to be good partners. Yeah,
It's good to have the data right here.
it really is. And they're putting in newer equipment and better access to data for us, perhaps. I mean,
Nice looking building.
much better aesthetic, no question.
You don't even really notice it there anymore. You grew up here.
In all seriousness, I mean, it is prime waterfront. They are taking more space. It's
No
nice to
doubt.
be a nice neighbor, but I've done a lot of leases with governmental entities. And, they pay good money, so I wouldn't.
We've been pro and con on it. That's why we're getting some having the Corps help us get some other data and just to take a look at what's out there, so we don't, because we saw some other data for some of these things that was way up there, and we thought, wow, that's a lot. What's the reason for that? So there probably isn't a methodology is the answer. Whatever community the Corps of Engineers comes in contact with, they negotiate the deal that the community is there wants to negotiate. There's probably not a lot of rhyme or reason. And probably when it was put there, nobody even questioned it. You just, the federal government said, we're doing this. Thank you for your space and goodbye.
We do get the building.
they've presented that to you. It's a kind of block building with a standing seam metal hip style roof.
It was last summer, I think we talked about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Holland, Michigan.
Yes, Holland, Michigan, yeah.
A lot better. That good for everyone? Okay. You call the roll?
Counselor Dilaba?
Yes.
Counselor Fisher?
Yes.
Counselor Kennedy?
Yes.
Counselor Reish?
Yes.
Counselor Scamperly?
Yes.
Mayor Skelly?
Yes.
Approved.
And this brings us to old business. And we will begin with City Manager Stephen Jelly.
Thanks, Mayor. I just wanted to update council on some of our ongoing topics. The police reform collaborative group, I think we're doing well. We are this week on to the public engagement. So twice, tomorrow, Tuesday, one from 2 to 3:30 and one from 6 to 7:30. Public will have an opportunity to either come to chambers here and talk with the group or call in on the GoToWebinar. So we got about 120 comments back from the survey, and a good range of comments there that the group has been reviewing. So I think tomorrow we'll get a feel, and we'll see what the community engagement response is like. If we have to do additional sessions, we'll look at doing that. We're staying completely open. Right now, we've been paying attention to some of the others that have gone on. I think we've had good advertisement. We've had good publication that ours is going on. So I'm hoping for, excuse me, people that want to participate will have opportunity tomorrow. That's why we planned the 2 different times. So, and then we'll plan what's next after that.
You said you were going to send us those surveys. You were scanning them and going to send them to.
Well, I think we're going to go just a little longer, Counselor. I want to keep the committee's business for the moment, within the committee. So we can make a sort of a sanitized number of recommendations too. I mean, all the information certainly is public. There's nothing there that, we won't be making available just for the moment while we're working through some of those things. All the members haven't seen them just yet, and I'd like to be able to frame some out of there. And again, not that I think anyone's going to do anything with them, but the more times I send it out, the more times it can be sent out. So if anybody on council would really like to see them sooner than just a little bit farther down the process, certainly welcome to come to City Hall. I've got them all in a big binder and can make them available for people to look at. I just would like to let the committee finish working through at least the high parts of their work before we start opening up the information to other people. And certainly everything tomorrow will be public and recorded. Sales tax preemption, again, as I indicated earlier, I've had the city attorney and the accountant working to get us all the information. Next council meeting, we'll have a little more detailed presentation. I will send that to all of you well in advance of the council meeting so you can read through it. It'll be too much information to brief all of the council meeting, but I just want to make sure everybody understands, exactly the formula, where the sales tax amount will be derived from, exactly how the process will work through. So I think we're coming together well on this. Senator Ritchie's office was very helpful in providing a contact at the comptroller that's been dedicated to work with us. She's also dedicated her deputy chief of staff, Logan Eddy, to working with us in case we need anything from the state agency. So again, I hope the next meeting to have a pretty detailed brief on where we're going with this. Sewer analysis update, just from our discussion earlier in the week, just letting you all know we're continuing to move forward with how do we provide you options, for how we ultimately run the sewer and water business as efficiently as we can. We know that next year we take a pretty big leap when our bond payment starts. $1.4 million payment added to our expenditures every year, so that will have a big impact on rates. So as I told all of you a couple meetings ago, we finished all the analysis on the revenue, what we believe our costs are, and now I'm just trying to gather all the information I can to determine is there any way that we can reduce expenses, including on the labor and personnel side perhaps. I don't have a foregone conclusion where this is by any stretch. I just think it's part of doing the due diligence to bring us back. What can we do to keep this to keep these rates somewhat level. Again, it's a big project with a big payment starting next year, and we're not finished yet. I mean that's really the the long and short of it is we're getting the wastewater treatment plant done. Presumably we'll get the bulk of the lift stations done, but we've got a lot of distribution lines in the ground out there at some point are going to need it. So we really have got to do our best to drive everything down as best we can.
I know you and Angela are working on the rate. I just, I hope we can do our best to make it gradual, without, the least big, spikes that we can.
No, certainly, Mayor. That's the intent is to not have significant rates at any period of time. I think one of the, the important things to note, probably from some of the presentations different, I'm not actively looking to use the sewer fund balance to pay down rates. I just think that is, we're just robbing Peter to pay Paul. We're sort of in this spot with borrowing all this money because we hadn't been saving enough money to be able to take on, the renovations and the repairs. So I'm really not in favor at this point of bringing you a recommendation that will have us depleting the fund balance over any period of time. There is some perhaps we could use because our fund balance is running a little higher than the recommendation would be, but I really think my recommendation would be to put that money into a capital reserve because our fund balance shouldn't be construed with, growing a significant pot of money at some point. So 10 or 15 or 20 years down the road, when somebody else has got to do this, they're not having to look at bonding and all of it. How do we save money in this enterprise? So I really do think we're putting a lot of effort into this. I want to get it right. So that's why it may seem like it's taking a little longer than, excuse me, you'd like to see this, but there's a lot of moving parts to this. And then of course, trying to make the projections of what the revenue would be if we had haulers, bringing revenue into something else that adds to it. We've got a decent revenue projection on what we'll be taking in, again, based on a predicted rate prediction from Hewleton. Again, those are other decisions that council will make soon, is what will those rates be? What will our rate internally be? What will our rate for external customers be? And then what will our rate perhaps be a different rate for, for haulers that they're bringing in by truck? So those are all the things that, that we owe you for answers on that. So a little more work on revenue and a little more work on expenses, and hoping we have this dialed down, before the summer gets here, so we're ready to make decisions at budget time about where to go forward with.
We wrote and sent a letter to our elected officials that talked about the need for the funding for the 5 million, and also asking that one of the loans that was provided by, I forget the name of the funding, you recall?
EFC.
Environmental Facilities Corporation, that one of the loans, given our hardship as a community and all of our data, that they had the ability to convert one of those as a forgivable loan or convert it to a grant. Did that go to EFC?
Excuse me, Council. I've not sent the letter yet, but I've had 2 discussions with them about that. I'm trying to determine with them who the proper party would be and who the button will be, if you will, to get that consideration. They don't have the authority within their agency themselves, so I'll have an answer for you on that soon. I can assure all of you we're working with everybody. The letter that we sent was good. We had immediate response from Senator Schumer's office. Excuse me, his office has been engaging with us every day. We had a call with USDA last week, which clarified some issues about what we can and can't do. So the letter's definitely had a positive impact, and we'll be talking this week with EFC about what is the process for potential loan conversion.
Could you send that letter to EFC, please, so that the commissioner has it, and also, if you could speak to Senator Ritchie and Assemblyman Walzik's office to see if they've contacted EFC.
We will.
To see if they would consider that request, because I think otherwise we're looking at, if the numbers that I saw, 45% a rate increase for sewer alone. So that's why that's critical, and we need to follow up on that.
Excuse me, and there was no intent not to, Councilor. We're trying to work somewhat methodically right now with how we do things. I think we have a plan. I think we know what we need to do going forward now. I think as we look at where the funding left in the project, as we look at potentially de-scoping the pump stations off into separate projects that will then qualify us to go back to, such as USDA for funding. I think we're getting there. So I'm trying to get all of our options together so it doesn't appear like we're just shotgun blasting to whoever will listen, and trying to be methodical about how we're asking for this. So I think we're getting there. I feel like we made a lot of progress in the last couple of weeks. Some of these grants, like the Northern Border Regional Commission, going up significantly from $500,000 to $1 million, gives us a lot more latitude and the ability to apply for grant funds that can complete some of these projects for us. So.
Yeah, I'm just more concerned about the bigger dollar amount, and having Senator Ritchie and make a call to the Environmental Facilities Corporation, tell them in Walzig, that's a state agency, and that's, they're the ones to.
Understood.
Yep.
Understood.
Then on marketing, I know you touched on a little bit with haulers. What about, we have Untitled tied in, or gonna be tied in, of course, committed, expanding a greater water district or wastewater district, if you will. Oswegatchie, maybe some of Lisbon. Are looking at that, I'm sure it's a thought, but.
It is, and I don't. I've had some discussion with Supervisor Nelson and the Development Authority. Have confirmed Lisbon is in fact asked the Development Authority to look at the feasibility of being able to move into bring their waste to our station. So I think they've got quite a bit of work to do on that yet, but I'm certain we'll have an update just as soon as either one of them has anything for us. So he and I have talked a couple times. I think they are watching. As well, what our work is and our progress to see what the rates are going to be. Because again, I think as they go to sell a project like this to their community, they're going to have to be able to make some level of rate, prediction. So, right. So there's a lot going on with sewer, no question.
Honestly, it's amazing how much the city staff gets done with the few people we have.
Yeah, and I like to say we have to continue to look at these three segments as different enterprises: water, sewer, and city services general fund. They really are their own enterprises in and of themselves that we manage with the same board of directors, you all, and the same management staff, the city staffs. On the OPD dispatch, just again, the county has gotten our proposed timeline for discussion. I haven't heard back yet, but I expect the county administrator to get back to me sometime this week. Again, as you all know, we've sent several things over recently, and there were several things already over there: sales tax distribution, property tax foreclosure, hazmat team agreement. So the county's working through all those. I think we'll hear something soon on working with dispatch. As some of you may not know, they were just recently awarded the $6 million interoperable communications grant. So that's also given them the ability now and the funding to be able to do the expansion to the dispatch center, brick and mortar, and technology and personnel that they needed to be able to do to help make continued consolidations possible, not just for us, but for other smaller locations around the county. So I think the timing is all good right now. That they finally received the money that they were hoping to get for this. That's all I have under old business.
Yep.
Question. When Mr. McRoberts was speaking, I think you answered him. Were you going to address his issues with an opinion from the attorney?
I'll have one soon. Yes, sir.
Yep. Thank you. That's all I have for old business.
This brings us to new business, and we will begin with City Manager Stephen Jelly.
Just off the topics just for a second, I put a handout in front of each of the American Rescue Plan tonight. So this is it's a pretty short read, but the good news here is the bill that was passed in Congress to provide aid to state and local governments has done well for us. I think for one of the first times in a long time, perhaps even ever. I don't know the whole history for Ogdensburg, but federal money will be coming directly to the city of Ogdensburg. On the back of the second page is the amount that's been allotted for us, $1.14 million. So I think that's good for us. So the county will receive just shy of $21 million from this package. So for once, money that won't travel through the state to be taxed before it comes to the local government. I think this is good news for us. This was hot news today. I got it about an hour before the meeting. So, as far as, what will we do? What would our plan be, et cetera? I don't have any courses of action right now for you. We all know we've got plenty of places to spend money, not the least of which is the project we just talked about earlier. The alternate items for the wastewater treatment plant. I mean, there's lots of places, but this is certainly good news for us. Money coming directly.
Eligible for the wastewater treatment plant.
It appears, Mayor, just from the initial read, again, it's very, the sheet they sent tonight was very good, but it appears, infrastructure, water, sewer, and broadband infrastructure to be eligible for, and a host of other things. It really looks to me like they were just trying to get communities not to cover pension costs and not to reduce taxes using this money. Other than that, seems like the definitions of what it can be used for are pretty wide open. I think you'd be hard pressed to find it something we couldn't use it for. So more to follow on that as I get more details on the when and where it will come in.
National windfall.
Well, and I'd say before we use that word, Mayor, just perhaps we'd have no soon what the governor's doing. If he hits us with that 20% withhold again, that may very well buoy some of that pinch that we would have felt. So again, but nevertheless, good news whenever Washington is sending money directly to the state level. It appears the only local level of government that didn't get money directly was the villages. The calculation was too hard for them to break that. But if you'll notice, and I'll send all this to you tonight, it's about a 30-page document, but the rest of the pages are just what each of the towns and villages, counties, towns, and villages throughout New York State got. So you can see what everyone in there got. So our townships within St. Lawrence County got a distribution directly as well. So good news. Good news and about time.
Yeah.
Okay, so I want to give an update on, again, on a couple of the topics. I've got them under new business. I know they're not completely new, but just for our purposes, the property tax foreclosure. The county administrator and I have had a discussion after the resolutions were passed here in action by the county. So I believe we'll be meeting this week, Thursday or Friday, or next week, Monday or Tuesday at the latest, on preliminary discussions about the relationship, how the relationship could be made much more efficient between us and the county as it relates to that. Again, I don't have any other preliminary details. I think we all know here what our intent was, which is to hopefully transition this responsibility to the county and be able to reduce the burden that we have every year, making the city school district and the county whole on delinquent property tax amounts. So more to follow on that. Contaminated waterfront properties. We had a great meeting last Friday with the county administrator and their environment, or the county attorney and their environmental staff. Shade roller is our #1 priority right now. We certainly will be moving down the road here at some point, but I want to stay really hard focused on shade roller for the reasons we've talked about. We're close to marketing on Diamond National. The private parties to the east of us have got plans, or at least conceptual plans, thinking in the motion. So I don't want that shade roller property in the middle to hold either of us up. So we really are working hard to make this a priority. You'll see a request for a proposal going out soon. We want to get hard numbers. What are the final hard numbers to get that piece of ground the rest of the way cleaned up and get it permitted for use. So I hope to have something to report on that very soon. I do want to thank the county legislator and the county administrator for dedicating the resources, the county attorney and some of their staff. I think with the combination of them and Andrea's knowledge and efforts over the years, we're really close to being able to break out to get these done. Moving down to the east here, I did meet with the owners of 2 of the parcels on the old Ogdensburg property. I think we had productive discussion. We're going to meet again either this week or next week just to talk about how we move forward with collectively all getting these properties cleaned up. So again, we've got action in every direction on this. We've got all the parties engaged. I think everyone is fully committed to seeing us get some positive action going on cleaning all these up. And then last, I'm listed as a hazmat team. I'm just waiting for the revised agreement to come back. We've had some back and forth just on language of liability, responsibility for our efforts with the team, et cetera. So we're real close. I believe as early as the end of this week, I could have the draft back and reviewing it. You'll all recall you gave me authorization back several months ago to sign this. We just haven't been able to get the details resolved. Some of this was just put on hold while we were during the sales tax negotiation, but I will bring you back the details of where we are with that before I sign the final agreement. That's all for me, Mayor.
Does anyone else have any new business?
I do.
Okay, you do?
Yep. So back in January 2020, a little over a year ago, the mayor or the council approved the formation of an ad hoc committee for developing a community development plan. That kind of fell by the wayside. We started getting the committee together, and it fell by the wayside because of the pandemic. And I struggled with, how do we do this? And I got thinking about it, and it's like, do we need to hire a consultant to develop a community development plan? So I've taken a hard effort at drafting a plan and working with a couple of counselors and city manager. And I'd like to introduce a resolution tonight that wouldn't be voted on until 2 weeks from now. And you guys need time to read it and review it. But essentially, it would accept the plan and start the process for public input and discussion about it. It's about a 30-page document. It's very comprehensive. I think, it touches on everything from our vision to our goals, economic development, job creation, waterfront redevelopment, downtown redevelopment, tourism, housing, historic preservation, recreation, transportation, education, arts and culture, New York State facilities, taxation. And it goes into each one and outlines the problem basically and sets the goal. So it's rather comprehensive, and I think it encompasses everything that we all talk about each and every month at our meetings. Issues that are near and dear to Dan Scamperly's hearts or Mrs. Kennedy's hearts. Waterfront development and you name it, the Ready Project, everything's in here. And I think it's a real good draft, and I emphasize draft, and a good starting point to, send this to the planning board for their consideration and review. I have staff review it. And most importantly, receive public comment through the planning board as well as a future council meeting. And I would leave that to the city manager to organize and take care of. So I really do think it's a good start. I'm quite certain that there are many other ideas out there, and we really want people to come forward with their ideas and what they'd like. But this gives them an opportunity to read it over and say, okay, that's covered, but what about this? And gives the council the same opportunity, gives our planning board that opportunity and staff. And rather than spend $30,000 to $50,000 on a consultant to do it and spend over a year on it or a year and a half, I think we can get this done by June. That's my goal.
It's a beautiful piece of work.
Sounds like a good starting point, John. Yeah. Done some work.
Thank you.
Should I read this just to introduce it now? Or you just put it on the next agenda? Okay.
You're giving it to everybody, and we'll pass it to the staff, but I don't think there's any reason not to.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? So this brings us to discussion.
I've got one item. I noticed on the recent agenda, the same repair shop's been used multiple times. I know we had talked about prior that we were going to look at, if we were going to bid it out, or if we were going to spread the wealth more. I just wanted to make sure we were doing that. I've heard from a couple people that, haven't done any business with the city, and I just wanted to make sure that we're being a good neighbor to businesses in our community.
We are, and so ultimately the lion's share of the work is, the outsourced work is from the police department. So the police chief and I have talked, the DPW and I, director and I have talked to as far as what work we don't need to be doing in our shop because we just have a lot of heavy work to be doing. So we're going to come up with a process where we ensure that the work to garages that are capable, qualified with a capacity can work with that. So I think a lot of the optic is just that, an optic. And I think perhaps some of the garages that may not have gotten some work for whatever reason, haven't gotten it or been visited in a while. So we're revisiting that now, and we'll have a plan in place. I think it's appropriate for us to do that, to be able to try to find a way to put the work.
Pandemic's been hard on a lot of
No doubt.
businesses, and I think anything we can do if we are going to spend the money as a city
Yep.
to make sure that it just gets first.
Yep, absolutely.
Not criticizing any one business over another, just stating that.
No, DPW and I, director, had a conversation, for instance, about light vehicles. We've got 2 mechanics and more work most days than we can handle on the big heavy vehicles, or when something breaks in the field, fixing it. So probably not a lot of sense in trying to keep that work in house. It's not saving us that much money. And again, those are local businesses we want to support and get out there. I think it's the same as not having our own fuel island. We save a little bit of money, if we bought it on our own, but we're certainly a major employer. The city is be taking the fuel business away. So I think anything we're doing to take a look at what do we not need to be in the business of doing that someone else is better doing. So the mechanic work is like that. And a lot of other entities, when I worked at Fort Drum, that's what we did there. There was really just a rotating order from the motor pool.
With some type of, I don't know, document or resolution going forward, just stating that,
Absolutely.
we would use like a rotating system. If a job became available, the next job goes to this shop, and then the next job goes to this shop or whatever, just so that way there's like maybe local businesses who are interested could propose, lock down maybe the same rate for the city or something like that. So that way it would be enticing for all.
Absolutely. We'll do
I
it.
wonder if there's like some sort of middle rate we could just offer if anybody wants to do city work.
Yep.
I think that's what your point is, right?
Yeah, just something to make it
Yeah, we're gonna
open for all.
We're gonna look at all the factors. I want to make sure we don't slow our work down, but I think only using other people will speed it up. So we're gonna come up with I'll categorize a fair process in which we do it.
I just think putting the process on paper might
absolutely
make things a little more expedited and easy and
Yep.
less gray.
Any other discussion?
Yes. At the beginning of the meeting, Nicole brought up today's International Women's Day. So I think under our discussion, it's appropriate that we recognize all the women in this world. I'm a history teacher. And so I think about the Seneca Falls Convention some 180 years ago, and just how far women have come to demand equal rights and things. You look at some of the statistics these days, and it's the majority of women now that are holding CEO jobs and higher level management jobs, I guess I should say, as well as every facet of life. So important in the workload. And so I think we should give a special thank you to not only city staff, the women in the community, whether you're a management position or a wonderful mother, special role in every facet of life. Thank you.
It's, I'd like to see a resolution for our next meeting. If that's possible. It's unfortunate that we don't have one. Generally, those things are.
Steve, you're the only man at City Hall.
So I would like to add my thanks to that as well. Being the only city male employee here, I can honestly tell you that, and everybody, I don't want to forget, but special recognition. Ultimately, the city is kept moving every day by Kathy Jock and Andrea Smith, without a doubt. So I mean, there's no question. It's not to. Our code enforcement office is being kept alive right now by Nikki Woods, doing work for 2 people down there. So I mean, I think our comptroller office and our recently hired privatized accountant Angela Gray. I mean, these are all people that are keeping the city moving each and every day for us. So I think it's important in the management structure to recognize that. Jennifer Ashley upstairs, probably one of the most unsung heroes and employees of the city. Nobody probably has a real idea what Jennifer does, but I can tell you what she does every day. She does absolutely maintaining, keeping track of all the paperwork, all the contracts, all the processes that keep all of our grants moving, all of our construction projects moving, making sure people get paid, etc. So we have a lot to be thankful for all of our female employees at City Hall. Kathy's gonna hit me here. Oh, geez. I'm really going to be in trouble. And the rock star, I forgot Brittany. Make no mistake about where we'd be without Brittany. So I did not have big trouble in the morning for sure. Where is she?
Any other discussion? Okay, and this brings us to citizen participation. At this time, anyone attending in person, like to address the council, come down to the podium. You have 2 minutes. Anyone attending remotely, use the raise hand feature. You have 2 minutes.
The first individual is registered as David Price, and I will unmute that individual now. It appears your line is open, sir.
Good evening, Council. With regard to Mr. McRoberts' request and Mr. Jelly's response in the beginning of the meeting, I believe the lawyer is busy because of the actions of the mayor and council. The mayor is facing criminal charges. 4 councilors are facing judicial removal, arbitration hearings, and other legal challenges. Maybe if the majority of this council followed the law and actually read the charter, our lawyer would be more available for actual city work. I appreciate that you guys mentioned after Councilor Kennedy first brought up International Women's Day at the beginning of the meeting, and also the nice. I appreciate that you now have stopped and taken time to mention by name and to appreciate the women working there at City Hall and to make our daily operation for our city run so smoothly. I'm a little concerned that some councilors speak to our women employees and staff in ways that are unprofessional, especially the most.
That's enough. That's enough, Dave. No one changed anyone. Cut him off. Yeah.
To the city librarian.
That is rude. That is rude.
I don't see any of your hands raised.
We're not going to have accusations like that unfounded. And the next person?
That's it.
I don't see any other hands raised.
Okay. We do not have a need for executive session. At this time, I will make a motion to adjourn.
No second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Adjourned.